My father said I was a mistake, slammed me into the refrigerator and cut me off on my 19th birthday. I left home that night with just $200 and a revenge plan. I had been anxiously waiting for my 19th birthday for 4 years. It fell on a Saturday at the end of September, not because I wanted to vote or buy scratch-off tickets, which are things typical kids look forward to. I was counting down because this was my expiration date under their supervision, the day they couldn't legally force me back home if I chose to run away. I'm a 23-year-old guy who grew up in one of those houses that look great in photos. A 2-story craftsman-style home with white trim and shrubs that my father obsessively tends to every weekend. From the sidewalk it looked like we had everything under control. Inside, though, it felt like I was the only thing they wanted to hide. My brother Jake is 3 years younger, and he's been their favorite since the moment he took his first breath. Without exaggeration, the kid could destroy the garage and they'd still ask if he needed therapy. He even got a new Xbox to help him deal with his emotions. Meanwhile, I left a wet towel on the bathroom floor once and got a 50-minute lecture about respect and responsibility, which ended with my father asking if I'd been raised by wolves. Growing up, I learned to exist quietly with light steps, no complaints, and always one step ahead of what they needed so they wouldn't have to ask. My father looked at me as if I irritated him simply by being present. My mother was even worse because she smiled while saying things like, "Jake has natural talent, dear. You have to work twice as hard to keep up with him." Jake inherited the genetics, the personality, the breaks. After my mother lost 3 pregnancies before him, he became their miracle baby, the second chance. Meanwhile, I was just the son they had before they figured out what they really wanted. I tried anyway. I got good grades and worked part-time at a local hardware store, carrying bags of mulch and concrete mix after school. Never caused any problems. I saved every penny because I knew they wouldn't be able to afford my education. When my father talked about my future, he'd mumble something like, "You'll figure it out." Jake was 16 when he got a brand new gaming laptop for school. He mostly used it to watch videos and play games until 3 in the morning. When I wanted to borrow it to study for college, my mother told me to ask Jake's permission first. He told me to get my own. That ended the conversation. So when my 19th birthday came around, I had no expectations. Maybe a card with $20 inside. Maybe a sheet cake from the supermarket. Something that acknowledged my existence. I woke up around 10:30 and rushed downstairs to see my father wrapping silver ribbon around that sleek black box on the kitchen counter. Jake was bouncing around like it was Christmas morning. My mother had that fake, photo-perfect smile plastered on her face. Nobody looked at me once. My mother finally saw me standing there and said, "Oh, perfect timing, dear. Jake, go ahead." I just stood there, stunned and fascinated. Jake tore open the package and pulled out an exquisite stainless steel watch with a leather strap. One of those that costs more than 3 months of my earnings at the hardware store. One of those that appears in perfume ads and luxury car magazines. Man, how sick. Jake smiled as he put the watch on his wrist and turned it to catch the light. "Now I won't have to keep stealing yours, Dad." My father chuckled and messed up his hair. "You earned it, champ. We're proud of you." Earned it? The proudest boy. My biggest accomplishment that month was making the junior basketball team and avoiding suspension for vaping in the locker room. I waited there, hoping someone would remember, look at me, say the 2 most important words of that day. My mother noticed something in my expression and said, "Don't make that bitter face, Ethan. Life isn't about material things. When you're older, you'll understand that character matters more than gifts." I felt like I'd been punched. She spoke in that silky, condescending tone she uses when she wants to sound wise. As if I were a spoiled child throwing a tantrum over a toy. "I thought we were going to have cake," I commented gently. "Oh, we already had some earlier," Jake replied indifferently without looking up from his new wristwatch. "While you were sleeping in?" I blinked. "You ate cake without me?" "It was just a little thing," my mother responded hastily. Jake grinned. "Nothing major. No need to make a scene. Your name was on it. You missed it, man. I mean, it was kind of a joint celebration, but it's not your birthday. Get over it." My father got angry. "It's just a cake, Ethan. Stop being dramatic." Something in my mind snapped like a wire. I stared at Jake. I looked at him carefully, standing there with his $175 watch and wearing the hoodie I had bought with my own money, which he had taken 4 months earlier and never returned. "You know what?" I said, speaking louder than I intended. "This is pathetic and you're pathetic. You've never earned anything in your life. You just settle in while they give you everything. You do everything and pretend you're exceptional." Jake's cheeks flushed scarlet. "What's your problem, man?" "My problem?" I was joking and I misspoke. My problem is that I'm standing here on my birthday watching you get a watch just for existing, while they don't even remember what day it is. Ethan, my mother warned. That's enough. No, it's not enough. It's never been enough. You treat me like I'm a stray dog. You keep feeding him while throwing parties for the prodigy boy who failed every subject except PE. That's when my father reacted. He grabbed my shirt and threw me hard against the refrigerator. My head collided with the stainless steel. Everything went white for a fraction of a second. It's over for you, he said quietly and coldly. Got it? Done. I pushed him so hard he stumbled. His eyes widened in disbelief. I had never fought back before. Never raised my voice. Never struggled. Touch me again, I said softly. You're going to regret it. He lunged at me again, this time punching me and hitting my ribs once or twice. I doubled over, breathless. My mother screamed. Jake just stood there watching. My father grabbed my face, forcing me to look at him. Enough, he said. Celebrating a failure like you is over. You're nothing but a mistake. Get out of my sight. Mistake. That's what I was, not his son. I got up, ribs throbbing, tasting blood in my mouth, and faced all three of them. My mother was sobbing fake tears. Jake was still holding the watch. My father was breathing hard, hands clenched. And then I realized something. They were never going to love me. No matter what I did, how hard I tried, or how little I demanded. Even if I had raised myself, I would never be like Jake. So I made a choice. I went upstairs, grabbed my backpack, which contained a hoodie, some socks, granola bars, my phone charger, and the $200 I had been saving in an envelope taped under my desk drawer. It contained my ID, debit card, and a Greyhound bus schedule that I had downloaded to my phone 4 weeks earlier, just in case. At 2:30 in the morning, while everyone was sleeping, I snuck out through the back door. I didn't have a plan. I just knew I'd rather sleep on the street than spend one more night in that place. The first 4 nights were horrible. I won't sugarcoat it. I alternated between the 24-hour diner on Route 12 and a corner of the public library until they kicked me out at closing, and a spot behind the YMCA that nobody checked after midnight. I figured out which vending machines were most likely to double drop if you hit them right, which gas station bathrooms had the best soap for cleaning up, and which bus lines ran all night so I could sleep undisturbed by the police. On the 4th day I almost got caught. I was passing through the small shopping center to charge my phone at the library when I noticed my father's car pulling into the parking lot like he owned the place. The bumper has the same dents as the custom license plate frame. My thoughts became icy. I hid behind a vending machine near the laundromat door and stood there pretending to browse the internet as if I belonged there. I saw him get out, look around, and then walk into the supermarket like he was on a mission. He didn't see me, but I learned something right there. Disappearing isn't just about leaving. It's about staying away when you're 5 seconds from being caught. On the 5th night, my phone had almost died. My hoodie smelled of sweat and rain, and I had eaten so many protein bars from the gas station that I felt my stomach was going to revolt. That's when I found the church downtown. They offered a shelter program for kids in the basement. Nothing spectacular, just cots and 3 hot meals a week. The person who attended to me was a gray-haired gentleman with kind eyes, the kind of thing you don't see often. He didn't ask questions when I arrived with my backpack and a bruised lip. They just nodded and sent me to an empty cot near the back. I stayed there for 11 days. I met some people. I learned how to stretch $3 into 2 dinners. How to recognize trouble before it finds you. How to sleep light so nobody steals your belongings. During the day, I would walk to the library and use the public computers to fill out job applications. I applied everywhere. Restaurants, stores, warehouses, delivery services, anything that would hire someone with a high school diploma and a pulse. After about a week and a half, my phone started buzzing with callbacks. It was also around this time that my father started calling. The first message was angry and threatening, followed by confusion and desperation. By the 4th voicemail, he was in tears. Your room is still here, Ethan. Please come home. We can talk about this. I hadn't returned the call. What did I expect? What did I want to say? That I'd rather sleep on a cot in a church basement than live in a house where I was a mistake? In the end, I got a job at a medical supply distribution center. This huge facility on the outskirts of Highway 47 shipped hospital equipment and pharmaceutical supplies to clinics in 3 states. The pay was minimum wage plus occasional overtime. But they hired me on the spot when I showed up for the interview wearing a borrowed button-down shirt. The operations manager, a guy with 4 arms as thick as steel cables, looked at me and said, "You show up on time. You work hard. You don't steal. We're good. That's the deal." I arrived early every day. After 2 weeks sleeping at the shelter, I found the older gentleman from intake outside after one of the meals. He was handing out donated blankets and canned soup. A former electrician who retired early when his wife passed away. He said he had a converted shed in the back of his house that he'd been using for storage, but was thinking about renting it cheap to someone who needed a break. I asked how cheap. He said $130 a week including utilities. I moved in the next morning. It wasn't much. A twin mattress on a metal frame, a space heater that only worked if you breathed on it right, a microwave and a hot plate. It smelled like motor oil and old newspapers, but it was cozy, private and mine. The landlord largely ignored me, only knocked on the door once a week to collect rent and occasionally left a grocery bag at the door without saying anything. I worked over 50 hours at the distribution center, occasionally doing Saturday shifts when they needed people for critical shipments. I kept my head down, completed the task and didn't complain. After about 7 weeks, management started assigning me to the inventory control sector, which required less physical effort. He never explained why. Just did it. At night, I would walk to the library to work on community college applications. I had missed some deadlines, but enrollment for the spring semester was still available. I drafted essays on my phone, stored them in a free cloud account, and printed them at the library for 15 cents per page. Each application fee hurt. $50 here, $60 there. But I paid them. I didn't tell my parents or anyone. By early December, I had established a routine at the center. I started recognizing faces and learning names. It felt strange, like I was actually building something genuine. My phone still rang sometimes with unknown numbers, mostly voicemails that I discarded without listening. I assumed they had moved on by then. Turned my room into a home gym, office, or storage room. Then one day in early December, I received an email from my high school counselor. Ethan, I hope you're well. Are you safe? I wanted to let you know that your request for school transcripts has been canceled. Your parents informed the school administration that you would not be pursuing higher education. I read it 5 times. They asked us to stop all correspondence regarding college applications and I wanted to make sure you were aware. Please contact me if you need help. So I called her back. She verified everything. My parents had contacted the school 4 weeks ago, claiming I had given up on attending college and requesting my transcript be considered inactive. Several deadlines had already expired. A state award I had applied for was no longer available. I spent the next 4 days fixing it, calling the school to explain the problem and reactivating my records. The counselor helped as much as she could, writing letters and making phone calls. But some opportunities had already passed. That night, I sat in the shed, staring at the wall, and realized they still weren't done with me. They were trying to aggressively sabotage my future before I could prove them wrong. That's when I stopped feeling sad and started preparing. Winter arrived with force. The shed had minimal insulation and little space. Only one heater worked if it was positioned exactly right. Most nights, I wore 3 layers of clothing to sleep, piled on my socks and snuggled up tight. Work increased during the holidays. Most weeks, I did double shifts with back pain and raw hands. However, each extra shift cost an additional $80 in tuition. The manager started transferring me to logistics coordination. Less physical effort meant more problem solving. And I discovered I was good at it. One night, the inventory system crashed just before a crucial deadline. The entire team panicked when I observed the error message. The manager was on the phone complaining to headquarters. Between one task and another, I had been training on Excel and basic database skills at the library. This error was simple. A corrupted data table. I walked over there. Try reloading yesterday's backup. The current database is corrupted. The manager looked at me. You know how to do that? I shrugged. I can try. After 15 minutes, the system was operational. He slapped me on the back so hard it left a mark. You just saved us a $30,000 fine, kid. The news spread quickly. Within 2 weeks, people started coming to me when their tech equipment had problems. I didn't get a raise, but people remembered my name. I started seeing myself as more than just a young guy stacking boxes. By the end of December, I had saved enough for spring tuition. I enrolled in 3 community college programs. I had to apply for a student loan waiver for financial aid. I presented them with housing documents, a medical certificate, proof that I was self-sufficient, 6 trips, and a pile of papers. Later I finished. In January I was accepted. I received letters regarding all 3 programs, along with a small need-based financial aid scholarship. I spent 2 hours staring at the email, fixated on the word congratulations, as if it could disappear. That night, I forced myself to make a box cake in the landlord's kitchen. Chocolate, lopsided, and half burnt. I wrote my own name, Ethan, with blue icing. I ate 3 pieces. I saved the rest. The next morning, I enrolled in classes. Introduction to Business Management, college-level math, English composition, and fundamentals of logistics. I didn't tell my parents, but small communities speak for themselves. And 4 weeks later, I ran into a neighbor at the supermarket. She gave a wide smile. "Ethan, I heard you're going to college. Your mother must be so proud." I waved my hand. Yeah, she must be. But I knew she wasn't. Later that week, my mother called from an unknown number. I let it drop to voicemail. She didn't cry or yell. She simply said in her calculated, fake sweet voice, "We heard about the school, Ethan. That's great. I hope you remember where you came from." As if I owed them anything. Deleted. Classes started. Mornings were spent working, afternoons attending classes, and evenings at the library. I found an apartment near the university with 2 quiet roommates who paid rent on time. I left the shed with a handshake, a thank you, and an extra $60 for the landlord. My business professor noticed I learned things quickly. He started giving me extra work, helping other students, creating class schedules. I made the dean's honor list in the spring semester and got an administrative position on campus in the fall with better pay than the warehouse. The first year was tough but stable. In the second year, I adapted. Better apartment, better routine, and higher grades. I completed my 2-year technical course and then enrolled at the state institution to pursue my bachelor's degree. When I was in my 3rd year of college pursuing my bachelor's, I had been away from home for about 3 years. It felt like forever. Then one night in mid-September, a message arrived on LinkedIn from an old neighbor. "Hey Ethan, wasn't sure if I should mention this but thought you had the right to know. Your parents just put the house up for sale. The sign went up yesterday. Hope you're doing well." I took a quick look at the note. The house was for sale. At first, nothing. Everything was blank. Then something different, something cold and focused. I opened Zillow. The listing was easy to find. Professional photographs, staged furniture, and generic descriptions. A charming family home with personality. 3 bedrooms plus an extra room. Hardwood floors, quiet neighborhood. It had been carefully renovated and maintained for over 20 years. I took a look at the photos. Living room, kitchen, master bedroom, guest bathroom, and a room called Jake's office/extra room. My room, but it wasn't mine anymore. Beige walls, bland bedding, generic landscape prints. No evidence of the 18 years I spent there. No posters, desks, or books. They hadn't simply erased me. They had completely remodeled me out. I sat there for a long time, phone in hand, staring at the listing being sold. The asking price was quite steep for a property of that age in that area. They were obviously desperate. Probably needed to sell fast. I investigated further. Public property records are surprisingly easy to find if you know where to look. I examined the mortgage history, tax documents, and previous transactions. And they discovered something unusual. The mortgage wasn't paid off. Not even close. And they were behind on payments. According to public lien planning records, they were 4 to 5 months behind. That's when the concept started to take shape. I wanted to visit the house one last time before it went to someone else. So I did something pretty crazy. I waited until the open house. They had one scheduled for that Sunday. According to the listing, when I arrived, the realtor was greeting visitors at the garage entrance. To look legitimate, I borrowed my roommate's dress shirt and arranged a briefcase full of miscellaneous documents. The agent had no idea she was guiding a ghost on a tour. "So the sellers are super motivated," she continued, nervously clicking her pen as we walked up the driveway. "They've already moved most of their personal belongings. I'm looking for a quick resolution. The youngest son just started college in another state. Of course Jake is their youngest." I nodded and followed her inside. She kept talking about crown molding, new appliances, and thermally insulated windows. I barely heard her. My thoughts were focused on the gaps, the walls, and the fact that I was no longer there. The kitchen looked the same. So did the living room. My father's bedroom was decorated with rented furniture. Then we went to my old room. I stood in the doorway, cold, feeling nothing but cold. The agent pointed around as if displaying a treasure. This was their son's game and study area. Gets lots of natural light. An ideal adaptable space. Game and study room. That's what I had become. Jake's extra space. I went in. They had organized everything like a college study room. A sleek desk with a light. A bulletin board with dorm checklists carefully posted. College brochures scattered on a side table. Jake's name was on everything. Next we went to Jake's actual room, still decorated, still had his belongings. Trophies adorned the shelf. Posters adorned the walls. They hadn't touched anything. The backyard was worse. The treehouse I had built with my uncle when I was 13, where I spent hundreds of hours reading and escaping, had been demolished. It was just a rectangle of dirt with some rusty screws sticking out of rotten beams. The agent saw me observing carefully. The seller said they had dismantled an old building back there. There's a liability issue involved. I nodded. Said nothing. She waited a minute, perhaps sensing something strange in my silence. Want to see the garage before we finish? She said in a pleasant tone. I followed her through the side entrance. The garage was chaos, with moving boxes and plastic containers piled against the back wall. Most were labeled in my mother's impeccable handwriting. Christmas decorations. Kitchen overflow. Jake, please store. Then I noticed the corner. 3 containers were pushed under a broken mat. Duct tape labels with the same handwriting. Donate. Old bedroom mess. And the last one is the smallest of all, almost like an insignificant detail. Trash. And guess whose trash that was? Mine, of course. I stared at the trash can for a long time. The realtor didn't notice. She was already heading back inside, discussing square footage. I moved to the back wall with my hands in my pockets, breathing deeply. This was the backyard where I learned to ride a bike and buried a 4th grade time capsule, which is probably still under the oak tree where I lived for 18 years. Now it's just another listing, another transaction. That night, sitting in my car after the event, I made a decision. If they want to erase me, fine. But I was going to make sure the whole world knew who I was and they were going to watch from the ruins. I didn't want screaming retaliation. I wanted slow-burning revenge, the kind that sneaks up, destroys silently and leaves no trace. The text arrived unexpectedly, about 2 months after I had started attending community college. Jake. That was the first time I'd heard from him since I left. Heard you're working at a supermarket and attending community college. How pathetic. Then came another message. You know what I did with your room, right? Check this out. They included a photo. My old room, but it wasn't really mine anymore. Freshly painted, with new furniture and decorated like a showroom for the open house. Clean and immaculate as if I had never existed. Took out all your trash. Looks so much better now. I guess that's what happens when dead weight disappears. Keep being broke while doing your part-time job. Don't come back. Oh, and thanks for moving out. We really needed the space for anything worthwhile. I stared at the message for a full minute. Not hurt, not furious, just cold and calculating. He wanted a reaction. They wanted me to respond with something desperate or defensive. I wanted to make sure they still had influence over me. I didn't respond. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that photo and how easy it was for them to remove me. Around 2 in the morning, I opened Instagram and started browsing to pass the time. That's when I found it. Jake's Finsta is public. Same face but different username. Some variation of his name using random numbers. The kind of account that individuals create when they think they're being clever, but are actually being careless. His post was still active. Posted 6 hours ago. The first slide showed him sitting in my old room. Caption, finally got rid of the dead weight. The second slide showed him filming himself in the mirror. Caption, the golden boy keeps winning. I took screenshots of both. The username is displayed as well as the timestamp. Then I kept browsing through his highlights. Months of posts, and that's when I found the gold mine. A highlight presentation titled Real Talk had slides from a few months back. Jake joking with his friends about duplicating someone else's calculus test. Another slide bragging about having his girlfriend write his English essays. Another one laughing about making up volunteer hours on his college application. Screenshots of group discussions where he admits plagiarism. Nothing hidden, nothing private, it's all publicly exposed, you idiot. I took screenshots of each one. I made sure the username and timestamps were displayed in all the captures. Then I saved them for myself. I opened my laptop. Created a new folder inside one called Home. I named it Receipts. That's when I decided I wasn't going to just survive anymore. I'm not just building my own life and hoping that karma would one day catch up with me. I would be the karma. The first step was obtaining information. True information is buried in paperwork and public records. I kept everything organized as if I were developing a case, which is what I was doing. On my laptop, I had a folder called Home. And inside it was another folder called Don't Lie to Me, containing PDFs and screenshots, highlighted dates, links between counties, bookmarked pages, and a continuous notes file where I recorded who said what and when. I also printed the worst stuff. Stapler paper, cheap binder, and plastic covers. There's something about having them in your hands that makes them real. I spent the next 2 weeks investigating everything related to the sale of their property. Public records were enough. Permits, mortgages, outdated MLS notes, homeowners association meeting minutes and court documents. I captured everything with screenshots and kept a continuous log as if it were a case. Something fascinating happened. The basement had been flooded 3 times in the last 7 years. Drainage system problems, pump failures, water damage, and foundation issues. All cracks were documented and being treated discreetly and economically with minimal repairs. Nothing that stands out in a superficial inspection, but enough to be a serious problem for any buyer who examines them. Guess what doesn't stand out in the current seller's disclosure? Flooding, foundation problems, all of it. They were hiding it. It's not just about omitting information, but intentionally concealing systemic problems. This is fraud, that is, actual fraud. Real estate fraud. This could void the deal, expose them to litigation, and undermine their credibility. I saved each document, printed copies, and backups uploaded to 3 different cloud accounts. But proof alone wasn't enough. I needed time and planning. I contacted someone I hadn't spoken to in years, an old acquaintance from high school. We studied together and ran on the same track team. He had gone into data analysis and now worked as a freelancer conducting background research. We studied together and ran on the same track team. He had gone into data analysis and now worked as a freelancer conducting background research for small law firms. We weren't particularly close, but I had helped him once when his car broke down in junior year and he needed a ride to a college interview. We met at a coffee shop near the school. I described what I needed. Not everything, just the right amount. I need to know what's hidden in public records, I informed him. Property history, permits, insurance claims, things a typical buyer wouldn't look for. He snapped his fingers and smiled. Give me 3 days. He delivered in 48 hours. My friend didn't hack anything. He just knew how to get permits, old posts, and insurance information that most people never notice. County building permits revealed 3 distinct waterproofing operations over 6 years. He discovered the contractor invoices my father had sent to the homeowners association for shared drainage system concerns. HOA meeting minutes are public domain in our county. Old MLS notes from when they initially purchased the property showed some basement moisture. Documents from a small claims lawsuit filed by a previous owner were also found for water damage before my parents bought the house. The basement problem was bigger than I imagined. Not just flooding but also serious foundation ruptures with water seeping through the walls during heavy rains. The sump pump was a temporary solution. The definitive solution would cost at least $40,000. My parents knew this. My acquaintance discovered a building permit application from 8 months ago, in which my father claimed waterproofing, basement repair, and renovation. The work description was for temporary repairs. They did the bare minimum and never disclosed anything. I had them, but I wasn't ready to move yet. I wanted the timing to be exact and precise. Meanwhile, I continued developing my life. The institution invited me to speak at the fall event for first-generation students. They wanted veteran students who had overcome obstacles to share their experiences. Someone who persevered despite lack of family support. The event was scheduled for late October and would be open to the entire university, including staff, students, and parents. That's when I knew the timing was perfect. What if my parents saw me on stage, recognized as a success, and publicly applauded just when their house sale failed? What if everything they created, their image, the idyllic family myth, crumbled because I succeeded without them? I didn't scream but smiled. I started putting the pieces in place. I had the documentation, the proof of fraud ready to go at the appropriate time. I contacted the college communications department and they confirmed that my story would be included. Full profile, photographs, and everything. I agreed to everything. And then I received another letter. Jake shared screenshots from his Finsta. All those posts bragging. There were documents in my receipts folder waiting for information about cheating, falsifying volunteer hours, and plagiarizing essays. Nothing major, but packaged together and forwarded to the appropriate admissions office. This is different. I didn't want to destroy him, just remind him that nobody is untouchable forever. I waited until October and then I began. The welcome speech was given on a Thursday afternoon. I practiced it a dozen times alone in my apartment, hoping to convey confidence without seeming rehearsed. The college wanted something inspirational, so I offered them honest answers. I talked about growing up invisible, working 2 jobs to cover application costs, sleeping in a church shelter, and learning to make $3 stretch into 2 meals. And the moment I understood I didn't need anyone's permission to be myself. I made it onto the dean's honor list for 4 consecutive semesters while working part-time and attending college. The auditorium was packed. 300 people, possibly more, including students, parents, teachers, and my parents who were probably watching online. The complete video was released on the college website that night. 3 hours later, it had already been shared 40 times. By morning, 100 former classmates commented and teachers reached out. Strangers received notes claiming they had been through something similar, and my story offered them hope, which my parents noticed. I know because someone sent me a screenshot of a comment my mother made on a shared post. This is full of exaggerations. Some people just don't value everything their families sacrifice. Passive, aggressive, defensive, and perfectionist. She was shaken. And I wasn't finished. What amused me was how quickly things got out of my control. The local community page took over because small communities see other people's lives as free entertainment. Someone posted the story. Another person sent a screenshot of my mother's response, and then the replies turned into endless gossip pretending to be concerned, but really just performing. The next day, the realtor abruptly disabled comments on the listing. Not a coincidence, just damage control. While the profile was being circulated online, I completed phase 2. The property buyers were finalizing inspections. Everything was coming to an end. They had already secured financing, started packing, and were psychologically invested in the idea that this would be their new home. That's when I sent the box, anonymous, untraceable, and forwarded through a third-party mail provider. Inside was a flash drive, license history showing recurring waterproofing work, images from the open house listing showing suspicious stains on the walls, screenshots of HOA meeting minutes indicating shared drainage system concerns, copies of previous MLS comments suggesting moisture, and the little that the complaint includes court case records. Based on the previous owner's case as well as a prepared letter, it was found that this property has hidden structural damage. The sellers were aware of the situation and actively disguised it. If you close the deal on this residence, you assume the obligation. Ask the agent about any waterproofing permits or foundation problems that have been reported in county records. See what they say. 4 days later, the listing disappeared. The buyers backed out vehemently. Here's the problem with real estate. When the buyer's inspection confirms water infiltration and foundation damage, and the buyer's agent requests repairs or credits in writing, they are legally obligated to inform the buyer going forward. The seller's realtor could no longer hide it. The buyer's realtor sent her a formal email, urging the sellers to fix secret structural problems or they would walk. That email may not be public, but it circulated quite a bit. Real estate agents talk. Small-town realtors especially. Potential buyers would learn about it. Any reliable buyer's agent would ask questions, and if she tries to hide it now, she'll lose her license. They were behind on the mortgage and couldn't sell without disclosing and fixing the situation. They didn't have $40,000. Facing foreclosure, I didn't celebrate. Instead, I watched the domino effect. Then came the third step. Jake was applying to colleges, prestigious universities and programs based on fake grades and invented accomplishments. I sent an anonymous email to the Integrity of Admissions office with his top 3 choices. Concerns have arisen about academic dishonesty regarding candidate Jake. Attached are screenshots of false volunteer records and admission of plagiarism. Please review before making final acceptance decisions. I provided the screenshots. Jake joking about duplicating assignments, bragging about falsifying community service hours, and laughing about how friends signed attendance sheets he never earned. I didn't want him to be rejected immediately. He just wanted a discreet under review stamp to follow him around. 2 weeks later, I learned through the small town network that Jake's first choice acceptance was delayed. They demanded more documents. The scholarship committee suspended his application seeking explanations. Nothing definitive, nothing explosive. Just questions. But Jake would know someone new. He would wait months for the worst, constantly checking his inbox and wondering who was watching. That was enough. 3 weeks passed and things were calm as always. I went to class, worked my shift, and studied at the library. It was already November, a little over 2 years after I had left their house. I had turned 22 months before. They had missed 2 birthdays. Then they showed up. When I came back from work on Tuesday night, they were waiting for me outside my apartment building. Both of them. My father looked older and exhausted, with drooping shoulders. My mother had that fake, calm smile she gives when she can barely control herself. "Ethan," my father began, his voice strained. "We need to talk." I stopped on the sidewalk, didn't approach, and just stared at them. "So," I spoke softly after a pause. "The house is unsellable and Jake's applications didn't go through. That's when you wanted to talk." My father reacted as if I had hit him. "We didn't realize things had gotten to this point." "You didn't know or didn't care?" "Please," my mother murmured, approaching. "We made mistakes." We realize that now, but this needs to stop. You're hurting your family. I laughed coldly. My family? Where was my family when you forgot my birthday? Where was my family when you sabotaged my college applications? Where was my family when Dad beat me and called me a mistake? Silence. My father stared at the floor. My mother's eyes filled with artificial tears, which she knows how to produce so well. We're losing everything, she said softly. The house is going to auction. Jake lost his scholarships. We had to resort to loans just to cover his tuition. We're barely hanging on. Great, I said without hesitation. You should know what that feels like. My father continued, his voice breaking. We're sorry. Okay, we apologize. We were wrong. But you need to understand we were under a lot of pressure. We made mistakes. Mistakes. I interrupted him. You didn't make mistakes. You made choices all the time. For 18 years you chose Jake over me. You chose to make me feel small, worthless, like I didn't matter. And now you're here because you need something from me. Not because you miss me, not because you regret what you did. Because you need help. My mother tried again. We thought maybe you could help us temporarily. We know you're doing well at work and in your studies. What if you could, she said, lend us money, support something, get you out of this mess? Let me guess. You heard I got promoted at work? Thought I'd be easy prey? They didn't argue. We're your parents, my father responded frantically. Doesn't that mean anything? You stopped being my parents the day you threw that party to watch Jake's game and forgot I existed, I replied. You stopped being my parents when you beat me and labeled me a failure. You stopped being my parents when you tried to harm my future. So no, it doesn't mean anything. My mother tried once more. Ethan, please. We're begging you. We're going to lose everything. I took out my phone and opened my photos and showed them the image from the orientation. I'm on stage holding my award and beaming. I said, this is what I built without you. This is what I became after you discarded me. And you know what? I'm better off because of it. So whatever you're about to lose, that's called consequences. Welcome to the club. I walked past them heading toward my building. My father held my arm. Not hard, just desperate. Don't do this, I replied gently, pulling away. Don't ever touch me again. He let me go. I looked at both of them one more time. You wanted me gone. You got your wish. Now go away. I went inside, closed the door, and that was the last time I saw them in person. Over the next year, pieces of their downfall started to appear. The house went to auction for default. They moved to a small apartment on the other side of town. To make ends meet, my father started working weekends delivering packages. Jake transferred to a public school without a scholarship and worked part-time at a call center to help with expenses. They made several attempts at contact. Birthday messages and end-of-year greetings, brief and superficial. Never a sincere apology. There were only timid attempts at reconnection that didn't acknowledge their actions. I never responded. At 22 years old, I graduated with honors. I was promoted twice at my university job. My real family is the one I chose, and they never forced me to beg for a place at the table. Sometimes late at night, I think about that birthday. The watch, the cake they ate without me, the word mistake. And I think about where I am now. My own apartment, my degree, my job, my chosen family. I built all of this from $200 in a backpack. They tried to erase me, turn my room into Jake's extra space, pretend I never mattered. But here I am. Still standing. Still succeeding. Still proving them wrong every single day. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was just me living well while they faced the consequences of treating their son like he was disposable. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's success they can never take credit for. It's a life they have no part in. It's being happy without them. And I am. I really am. They wanted me to disappear, so I did. But I disappeared into a better life, one they'll never be part of, one they can only watch from a distance as I keep climbing higher. Every achievement, every promotion, every moment of genuine happiness with people who actually care about me, that's my revenge. Not because I'm trying to hurt them, but because I'm living proof that they were wrong about me. I wasn't a mistake. I wasn't dead weight. I wasn't worthless. I was just a kid who deserved better, and when I didn't get it from them, I gave it to myself. And that's something they'll have to live with for the rest of their lives. The knowledge that they had a son who would have loved them, who would have made them proud, if only they had given him a chance.